And action.
And action. That's it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. I'm Rebecca Biblioteca. It is Monday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. It's October 27th, and I'm joined by my amazing colleagues, Radio Free Mormon and
Hello.
Bill Reel. How are you guys tonight?
Hello.
Good, good. I have to give a little warning. I have a little bit of a cold tonight, so hopefully I'll be able to, host this and do what I need to do, but I do have a little bit of a cold.
I do have a cough drop here for you, Rebecca. Ready?
Oh yeah, toss it over. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Okay, I think I'm good now. I think I'll be able to continue. This is perfect. So were you impressed by that? Our family's like, nah.
I really was. That was pretty good for you two.
I thought
it took a little bit of time to get there because you're so far apart. It had to actually go like 100 miles or something.
Yeah. Well, we both realized we both had cough drops on the set. So we thought, let's try something new. So like I said, it is October 27th. And we all know that the Day of the Dead is coming up in a few days. But I bet you guys didn't know that today, the 27th, is the Day of the Dead for pets. So I just wanted to give a shout out to my old pet, Sammy, the big orange cat. So if you guys have any pets you want to think of fondly today, it is the National Day of the Dead for remembrance of pets. They're both staring at me like they don't know what I'm talking about. Didn't you have a monkey, RFM? Come on.
No, my big brother did.
Ah, okay. Anyway, I bet some of our viewers and listeners will find that a very nice thought. So, all right, let's get going. We have a lot of news today, a lot of stories, a lot of bullet points. So here we go. We're going to be covering the recent changes to the LDS scriptures. This is huge. I didn't ever really think we'd have a headline like this, but here it is. Data indicating a decrease, and that's decrease going down in tithe payers. 55 new LDS missions announced. Can it be true? We're going to find out. Hashtag surviving Mormonism. I don't know if you guys are following this, but I'm going to take that story. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. Also, LDS leaders edging toward dementia. I think Bill is going to handle that story.
Hey, Rebecca, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How are you feeling about Jasmine Rappley right now?
Well, I mean, Jasmine is in the same space that all of us are in, but we are going to show one of her videos and discuss her take on the hashtag surviving Mormonism. So,
okay, because you seemed pretty upset with her before the show started.
I don't think I was upset. I think I was just hoping that things that were very, difficult would not be trivialized. But I do understand everybody comes from their own perspective, and maybe they don't have the knowledge or empathy to understand that trivializing certain things, is kind of bad form. But we'll talk about it. We'll see what everybody thinks. Thank you for bringing that up, RFM. The next thing we're going to discuss is the BYU game reverence outrage. There was outrage over reverence. You guys have probably followed this. And also the Crumbl CEO generosity. And this all has to do with the BYU game that was last weekend. Finishing up with AI religious freak out. Again, AI, it's a problem. And temple updates. So I think who has the first story? Is that you, Bill, with the scriptures? I think it is.
It is. So recently, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced that it had made minor adjustments to 25 section introductions in the Doctrine and Covenants and 2 chapter summaries in the Book of Mormon. The release emphasized that these are corrections of dates, locations, and contextual additions based on more than 20 years of study of the Joseph Smith Papers Project. These changes come now at a time when many are already wrestling with questions of authority, history, and revelation, but the church was careful to say that members are not expected to obtain new scriptures, so your existing copy is still valid, though digital editions have been or will be updated soon. I know on the church's site they've already been done, but in other places where things are linked and rewritten, those are maybe yet to come. Okay, so this here, let me put it up on the other slideshow just to make this a little easier. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but if you want to pause your screen, if you're watching this on TV, you should be able to read these on your phone. Good luck. But there is all of the old wording and new wording that are extremely minor on the left, and then the things that had contextual changes are on the right-hand side, section 78, 89, 94, 96, 97, 98, 101, 105. And we get over here, 109, 110, 111, 112, 115, 119, 121. 122, 126, and section 132. But I did, and they also have two as well, section 135, and then a couple of scriptures out of the Book of Mormon, which is 3rd Nephi 11 and 3rd Nephi 27. But I did want to go into just a couple of these changes that I think are the most significant, and I'll just note them really quick. Section 89, and RFM, you pointed this out in Mormonism After Dark, but we all grew up with the story being told about how Emma was not happy with everybody spitting tobacco on the floor. But Section 89 in the heading gave all the credit to Joseph Smith, and so they've added that Emma's concern over tobacco use prompted Joseph's inquiry. And so now for future readers who read D&C 89, the heading will give some credit to Emma for this revelation coming about. Doctrine and Covenants, section 119, we all grew up with the idea that there was a law of consecration, and it was the saints couldn't keep it. They weren't able to be faithful in keeping it. So the Lord allowed it to be taken away and then gave tithing to replace it. What the church has done is they've edited the heading in section 109 so as to make it permissible to have both the law of consecration and the law of tithing at the same time. And that makes sense because we go into the temple and we covenant to give everything, our time and energy and all that's needed and required to the building up of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so they were in a way already keeping the law of consecration anyway. Anything the church asks you to do, you're supposed to say yes and pay tithing. And so that's allowed. And that is over on, oh, I'm so sorry. That's over on this screen here. So those are those two, section 89 and section 119. And then the next one here is section 112. And in this, whereas it used to say that Thomas Marsh at the time was the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, it took that out, and it now acknowledges that Thomas Marsh was working behind the scenes to end conflict among church leaders and to unite the apostles. And so the heading went from ambiguously noting that Thomas Marsh left the church, and it subtly now rehabilitates Thomas Marsh, whose name for generations symbolized betrayal. And it does this by framing him now as a peacemaker amid conflict rather than a future apostate. And so it humanizes him and signals that dissent doesn't automatically make someone faithless. Now, it does that here, and plenty of other places it'll still make the person who leaves faithless. And then the last one that I thought was of interest.
Bill?
Yes, please.
I don't think I had looked at that one carefully enough. Because first off, these are only changes just in the introductions. They're not in any of the texts of the revelations themselves. I've thought most of them minor, pretty much all of them minor, I think I've said. I think this one may be the most significant one.
Yeah, it does go out of its way to acknowledge the good that Thomas Marsh had at a time when everyone else was criticizing Joseph or the church, and he was trying to keep everybody unified. Mm-hmm. And kudos to them for doing that.
Is that really a picture of Thomas Marsh?
That is an actual photograph of Thomas Marsh.
He has movie star good looks.
Kind of a Willem Dafoe kind of a look.
I think much better looking than that.
I thought Willem Dafoe and Clint Eastwood had a baby.
Yeah. And it was Thomas Marsh.
There it is. And then this one, which I think is also a big deal, only because the old section 132 heading, this is again the revelation on polygamy. The way this used to be worded was that, and it's that last sentence there on the bottom right, it was, although this revelation was recorded in 1843, evidence indicates that some of the principles involved in this revelation were known by the prophet as early as 1831. And I know RFM did some digging this week and is going to share a little point on this here in just a moment, but I want to note what it did change to. The church seems to acknowledge that that is perhaps erroneous, or at the very least, we've moved from a position of knowing something to no longer knowing something, which is sometimes, I think, the the real storyline of the restoration anyway. But I will just note here that it has been changed from as early as 1831 to simply the word earlier. So although the revelation was recorded in 1843, evidence indicates that some of the principles involved in this revelation were known by the prophet earlier instead of as early as 1831. RFM, what did you find in regards to why that 1831 year existed?
At the top here of this slide, it is always important to remember that even though this is the 1981 version of the Doctrine and Covenants, there has been or have been prior changes to the introductory material since 1981, most notably in 2013. And in 1981, that first line was since 1831. In 2013, it was changed to as early as 1831. And now it is changed to earlier. And I think that goes along with in other words, it's talking about how long Joseph Smith had known about the principles in this revelation. Okay, let's look at this. Very, very interesting, because there was something that happened last week on one of the shows, Bill. It might have been Friday night, when the subject came up about that 1831 language in the introduction to section 132 that's now gone. And what the heck was that referring to? Well, I remembered, fortunately, that I had podcasted about it. I remembered there was something there about it. I had said Joseph Fielding Smith last week. I was close, but no cigar. It's Joseph F. Smith. And here's the deal, okay? First off, Bruce R. McConkie wrote the headings to the Doctrine and Covenants for the 1981 edition, as well as for the Book of Mormon, as well as, I think, for all the standard works. Now, what happened then is 1981, his father-in-law famously is Joseph Fielding Smith. Joseph Fielding Smith's father is Joseph F. Smith. And that father of him is Hiram, right? But Joseph F. Smith. So, of course, Bruce R. McConkie adores Joseph Fielding Smith, reveres, worships, adulates, and also, I'm sure, his father, because they all said the same thing as far as their opinions about different kinds of doctrines in the LDS Church. And this is over 3 years ago. We did this, and we're going to have Cheryl Bruno on the show. This is right when her book came out, Method Infinite. And I was reading the book in order to find out, what it was about, and to hopefully do a good job of interviewing her. And it was before the interview, while I was reading, that I came upon this page. And down here, you can see where I have it highlighted. It is a footnote. I have a close-up of this. But I wrote 1831 on it because all of a sudden in this footnote on this page in this book, the answer to my question was finally resolved. I had come up with multiple answers to it over the years, none of them seeming to be really satisfying or satisfactory to me. This one, I think, is it. Okay, years later, Joseph F. Smith said, quote, that the women who entered into plural marriage with the prophet Joseph Smith were shown to him and named to him as early as 1831. And it's interesting because the first was since 1831, then it was modified to as early as 1831. I think that's actually the language that they use that just got changed. When the prophet Joseph Smith received the revelation in relation to the eternity of the marriage covenant, which includes plural marriage, in 1831, the Lord showed him those women who were to engage with him in the establishment of that principle in the church. And at that time, some of these women were named and given to him to become his wives when the time should come that this principle should be established. So I think that's where it came from. And this is Bruce R. McConkie, who knows about this because I'm sure he poured over all the records of his father-in-law and his grandfather-in-law, found this, and this has became his kind of the thing he knew that nobody else knew.
Can I say something here,
Yeah.
which is we have this idea that Joseph just made some mistakes in implementing polygamy, that maybe he erred in choosing young girls and choosing women already married. But here you have something where Joseph F. Smith isn't letting you take that apologetic route. This is God, the eternal Father, who showed him Lucy Walker. This is God, the eternal Father, who showed him Fanny Alger and the Lawrence sisters and the Partridge sisters and Helen Mar Kimball. That makes it a lot worse.
And how convenient, right? And it also makes sense if the Lord is showing them, oh, look, she's only 6 right now, but in a few years, Yeah, I would say that this new subject, the chapter heading, is sort of a Fanny Alger goalpost. Earlier is going to mean as early as they need it to be. And now it says that. So we'll see what happens with it.
Well, thank you very much. So anyway, I was looking up this comment that somebody else had made underneath that particular, there are different theories. One of them was a really good one, and I can't find it right now, but I don't know that it's that important. The main thing is that this is what it was, I think, that Bruce R. McConkie was making reference to without saying what it was he was making reference to. Because really, when you do read that, it does tend to raise more questions than it answers.
Yeah. And then
All
I think,
right.
I was gonna say, I think you've got a list of the changes over time as well.
Yes. So here we go. This was 1876. That was the edition of the Doctrine and Covenants in which Section 132 was first appeared. 1981, that's the next edition, I believe, or the next main edition of the Doctrine and Covenants, because there was one in 1921, I believe. The heading was changed to include a reference to the church's history of the church. It also noted that the doctrines and principles involved in this revelation had been known by the prophet since 1831. There's that since 1831 language, right? Now, 2013 comes along, and it says a new edition of the scriptures was released with revised headings based on modern historical scholarship from the Joseph Smith Papers Project. So this isn't the first time they've done this. For section 132, the heading was changed to remove the reference to the history of the church, which had been included in 1981, change the mention of Joseph Smith having known the principles since 1831 to as early as 1831, and add a cross-reference to Official Declaration 1, which formally ended the church's practice of plural marriage. And as you noted, Bill, the 2025 upcoming, it has already changed on the church's website. A further revision changing the wording as early as 1831 to earlier to acknowledge that some ambiguity exists regarding the exact timing when Joseph Smith first received knowledge of these principles. Now, something that they didn't mention here, but which I had mentioned in my previous podcast that I listened to last night, so I'm happy to share it with you here. This has already happened because this section 132 heading is the 1981 version. This is a picture from my triple com on that page. I got this before 2013, but after 1981. So it has the 1981 version here. Notice that I have circled in highlight. Although the revelation was recorded in 1843, it is evident from the historical records that the doctrines and principles involved. I circle in highlight doctrines because that word will vanish in the 2013 heading. That was one of the big things that they changed. And I'd forgotten it, frankly, that they had changed that, though I'm sure I had mentioned it at the time. Well, I did. I listened to myself mention it over 3 years ago.
That's interesting to watch doctrine disappear practically in real time when that change is made. Well, this is very significant because they're taking the practice of plural marriage, and whereas it had been called doctrine by Bruce R. McConkie in 1981, in 2013, it was no longer doctrine, or at least not referred to as such in the heading. So in 2013, doctrines was dropped from DNC 132 heading. So now it's, before this last change, although the revelation was recorded in 1843, evidence indicates that some of the principles, not some of the doctrines and principles, see, doctrines and principles, just principles. Evidence indicates that some of the principles involved in this revelation were known by the prophet as early as 1831. Okay, so I had wanted to bring up those things, and
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this earlier that the 2013 change dropping doctrines from heading retained in most recent change. In other words, they dropped doctrines in 2013 and they left it out in the most recent change. No sense in monkeying with that. So the question is eternal marriage, is polygamy a doctrine? And the answer is, it depends on what time of day you ask the question.
It's kind of like the family proclamation, right? That we talked about 2 weeks ago, which is now becoming doctrine, just in the way that they refer to it. So you're right. Doctrine comes and goes, temporary doctrines.
By the way, did I mention this tie before the show? I don't know if I mentioned it on the show. Have I mentioned it on the show?
Huh.
I'm wearing this in honor of my mom. It's a Hallmark tie, hand painted. I don't know. It's probably mass produced, but it looks like one. And it's got a nice full moon up here. And down here is a little ghost. Let me see here. See the ghost standing next to the tree? That's my mom. So happy Halloween, Mom. I wear this every year in honor of her.
And I asked you, did your mom love Halloween? And you said, no, not really.
Not really. No,
maybe
I was
that's
the
why
one who was
you're
crazy
wearing
about
that.
Halloween. But she, what did she do? What is the thing you're not supposed to do to kids because you're going to encourage it? She enabled it. She enabled my Halloween
She enabled
passion.
Halloween. That's awesome.
Do you know what you would do? I'll tell you this really quick, okay? I can't wait till Friday. Sorry, Bill. We got this great Halloween party at Mormonism After Dark on Friday. Rebecca, are you going to come?
I'm going to try to come. We'll see.
Okay, well, I hope so, because you have to wear a costume
Oh,
to be a host or to show up on the show as a guest.
okay.
We want to make sure everybody knows that and everybody's planning on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a scream. But I had this great idea was that, sometimes in the summer, sometimes when Halloween is impossibly long away, because it's my favorite holiday of the year, and I start feeling the spirit as soon as the calendar changes to October. Oh, my word. It's absolutely fascinating. Wonderful. Not fascinating. I'm trying to remember it right now. And I'm remembering that after it was all over, I was like totally depressed for a whole week because Halloween's not going to come again for another year. But my mom was nice enough that when I decided that it was an afternoon, I'm home from kindergarten or whatever it might have been, and I just needed to practice my trick-or-treating, that my mom would indulge me. That was the verb I was trying to think of. She would indulge me. So I would go up to the back door, knock, knock, knock. And she would come to the door and I would say, trick or treat. And then she would give me a piece of candy in my bag. And she'd close the door and I'd sit down on the walk and then I would eat the candy. And then I would stand up and I'd turn around and I'd knock on the door again. I could play that game all day. All right. So
that's a super sweet memory. I love that. I think the next story is tithing, but I was going to say Halloween. I was also a huge fan. I loved Halloween until I became a stay-at-home mom, and then I was left at home with all the fun-sized candy. That was a problem. So,
was it really?
It was a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also indulged and couldn't stop myself.
Well, those kids just better hide their candy from me.
I know. And I try to be really subtle. Like, okay, they're not, if I eat all the Snickers, they'll notice. But if I eat a few Snickers and a couple Twix, they did notice. They're like, Mom. I'm like, yeah, I know. All right. Next story. Is it Bill or you that is going to cover tithing?
No, this is me, because this is the Widow's Wife they put out this month in October, recently.
Big stories. Yep.
Their latest findings regarding tithing and how tithing is going in the 5 countries that they can look at or that they choose to look at. In the United States, we're used to the idea. We got no idea what tithing looks like because the church doesn't tell us and the church doesn't have to tell us. And apparently they feel no ethical or moral imperative to tell us. So it's all hidden here. But that's not the way it is in other nations where the church exists and where members pay tithing, right? So you've got 5 nations here. You've got Canada. Let's see. Can we go underneath? Let me see if I can do that, Bill. Hang on a second here. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. So you got Canada is the light blue line. You got the Netherlands, the green line. New Zealand is, that's a little bit of an orangish line. Then United Kingdom, red. Australia is another kind of blue. And then the black line, that's all of them put together. So that's the membership weighted average in the 5 countries, all right? So what you've got here is you have, let's see. Now we've got, hey, Bill, I'm sorry. I've got the thing that says the number of people who are watching and the live and the time count, and it's right over that, the title on the left. Could you read that for me?
Yeah, tithing participation rate and LDS member activity metric.
Right. So the idea is simply this, is that the church is also not really telling us a lot about its membership. Well, it's saying things about it, but it doesn't seem like they're necessarily telling us the full story. Let's put it that way. So what they're doing is they're looking at the payment of tithing as a metric for membership. Now, it's not going to be exact, and they recognize that, but also it's kind of compelling, the idea that if your membership goes down over time, so will the paying of tithing on average. If your membership goes up over time, so will your paying of tithing on average. So therefore, if you look at tithing going up, that would be reasonable to think that membership's going up, and vice versa. If tithing's going down, then it would be reasonable to think that membership is probably going down as well. So this is what it states. We estimate household tithing participation rates in 5 countries based on a number of criteria. Member donations reported in regular filings. See, they have to file them in these countries. Church membership statistics, national household incomes, and national household sizes. Okay, so they're covering all the bases and figuring this out. This metric is not the same as membership activity. Some members attend but don't tithe. Okay, so they're making it really clear what I spent a lot of time saying at the very beginning, which is they're not saying this is the same thing. All right, it's not the same thing because some members don't tithe. Some may pay partial tithing. Some may make more on which they're tithing, right? Some may make less. But trends for each are related, is how they end that particular paragraph. Finally, they say wage inflation and membership growth have more than offset declining trends in tithing participation. And then you can see the next page. So this is the tithing participation rate estimated from financial and other data. Over here on the next page, donations have grown steadily. All right. So this is what it looks like amongst these countries. We can see Canada, I believe that's the one that's up here. Yes, the highest. And the others are fighting for second place down here below. No, I think the Netherlands has last place. Pretty well tied up. That's the green one along the bottom. And then the other 3 countries you can see in there. And you can see that over the last 8 years or 9 years, since 2015, 2016, could be 10 years as well. They go all the way back on only 2 countries because of where they have the data. And the others all start by or on 2016. So that's the 9 years, except it goes up through 2024. Okay. So anyway, you can see there's a general upward trend amongst some of them. Some are flat, maybe going a little bit below. But what they suggest here, and this is important to take into account, and can you read this title as well, Bill, on the left for me?
Yeah, this is annual components of donations growth by country.
Okay. And it has to do with inflation, because you always got to take inflation into account, especially over the last 8 to 9 years. So what they say is membership donations in those 5 countries that they're studying is around 4% of LDS membership. So that's not a bad cohort to study for purposes of something like this. 4% of the entire membership, and I believe that's of the membership claimed, have not kept up with inflation. So member donations in these 5 countries have not kept up with inflation, indicating net attrition, i.e. membership going down. So if you were to just look at it without inflation from this page before, you might think like in Canada, see, you might think that membership's going up. Same with the red one in the United Kingdom, not so much New Zealand, barely maybe in Australia. It looks pretty flat down there in the Netherlands. But when you take into account inflation, you can guess what's going to happen to each of those lines. And they're going to go down, of course. So in Canada, which has total members, it says about, I'm so sorry, wage inflation up 40% in Canada. oh my gosh, tithings or donations plus 16%. That's what we'd expect it to go up. And when you take all that into account, what really is going on is a negative 17% change in full tithe payers implied by the donations. For the UK, you've got 31% inflation. Tithing or donations is actually would have to be up 24%. Put that in there. Nope, it's negative 6%. So even when it's going up, it's going nowhere near up enough to account for the inflation. When you take into account all of these show that full tithe payers are going down in each of these 5 countries that could be measured. In Canada, they're down 17%. In the UK, they're down 6%. In the Netherlands, they're down 10%. In Australia, they're down 10%. Thank you, Bill. And in New Zealand, down 15%. Now, I want to cite to this mainly because I have pretty consistently been poo-pooing the church when it's been talking about how strong the membership is, how it's growing, how in the last 3 years they had 900,000 new members and all this other kind of stuff. And the reason I've been poo-pooing it is not just because I don't believe them, although I certainly have to verify anything that they say before I believe it. I'm not saying it just because I don't believe it. I'm saying it because there's all these other statistics that are going on out there which contradict that rosy outlook of church growth. Some of it's the building, the ward buildings, not the temple, which are artificial by nature. But this is another very important part of that, which is the payment of tithing and how the good people at the Widow's Mite are keeping track of this stuff in an effort to keep the church as honest as they know how to be. Finally, this 4th page relates just to the UK. And this is very interesting, Bill. Do you remember that we were talking before, some months ago, about certain statistics that all of a sudden in 2022 and 23, they were going down, but then they started going up? And that had to do with missionaries. You remember that? And the question was that uptick, as some had theorized at the Widow's Mite, is that the people who put off their mission because of COVID and now they're going? And so what you're seeing is a doubling up of missionaries, some who would have gone earlier, but now they're going later. And then there's going to be a time period of like 2 years where you're having more missionaries than you normally would. And is that what that is? And the question was going to be, what's going to happen in the next reporting period? Will it continue to go up? In which case, no, this is genuine growth. Or will it continue to go back down? In which case, yeah, it looks like that was just a doubling up of missionaries. And now it's probably going to continue its decline. So the full-time missionaries in the UK, it looks like that's exactly what happened. It went from 300 in 2016. And then in 2003, you can see it went up. It's been going down, then it went up. And then this last reporting period for 2024, boom, now it's going down. We see the same kind of thing reflected in the humanitarian aid donations, though that may be related or not at all. I'm not sure. But we see, unfortunately, that the humanitarian aid from the UK, that's all this is from the UK, had been going up into 2023. It hit its high mark of all time, and then way down in 2024, back to about 2021 levels. So any comments about this?
I've got a couple of thoughts. So first off, the church is talking about significant growth. And at least in these areas, and I want to address the fact that we are only talking about a limited amount of areas here in a moment, but at least in these areas, the only 2 explanations for that would be, A, as you point out, maybe they're lying. They're just embellishing the numbers. They don't want the world or the members to know that the church is in decline, and they want to hide that. That's possible. They've hidden other things, a few anyway. The other option is that maybe there is a huge growth. Maybe lots of people are joining the church, but they just go inactive right away, that they're just not interested. They fall away. We also have indicators from inside the U.S. that the church is in decline in most parts of the United States. So maybe they're growing in other countries not listed here and not the United States. But then the thing that strikes me is that every country where the numbers are available to us, the church is in decline. That's a strange coincidence, isn't it? That every single place that the church is forced to share its data, the church is in decline in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're supposed to believe that somehow, as a coincidence also, in all these areas where the church doesn't have to report data, it is having such exceptional growth that it offsets these major countries where they're in decline. And I'll just say I find that to be a strange thing to believe by a church that's done nothing but lie to me since 1820.
Rebecca?
Or earlier. No, I was going to say exactly that. Everywhere they must report, the news is not good as far as what the church has tried to portray. And I will point out Australia and Canada especially had those big tithing scandals over the last 2 years. I am not surprised when the members started to understand what was really happening to the money. In Canada's case, billions are funneled off to BYU, right? Under that kind of little caveat of some students from Canada go there. So I'm not shocked to hear that at all. And I try to keep an eye on these countries where you must report, because honestly, what are the odds that there are only problems or declining growth in only these countries? That is not going to happen. I also think another litmus test here in the US, I was thinking about this over last week because I was in Florida and there is a meeting house in South Beach. It's right there on the water. It's prime real estate and it's going to be turned into apartments. I had read about this before and I actually went and visited the site. It's a gorgeous old historic meeting house, but it's now fences all around it and they're going to take it down and sell it for prime water state, real estate right there to build apartments. And I started thinking about all the posts I see from a lot of you about this meeting house is being sold off, or this is being torn down, or this is being repurposed. And we're going to talk about it when we talk about temples later. But in a lot of cases, they are tearing down meeting houses to build temples. So I would like anybody to show me a place where they are building a meeting house. I haven't heard of one being built in the US forever. So, to me, that's anecdotal, but I think it says something.
These are the new fairy tales that the leaders are telling the members to continue to fool them. The MO is the same. The fairy tales have changed.
The church, I'll say it again, the church is telling you that they are experiencing the most incredible growth they've experienced in a long, long time, since the 90s maybe. And every area that the data is available in big countries, the United Kingdom, in big places, that in decline, not growing. Australia, not growing. New Zealand, not growing. Huh.
But they must be growing because I understand that they're adding a whole bunch of missions, Bill.
Yeah, which I think you have a story that also maybe tells us an interesting twist on how to interpret that data.
There you go. The church news. It's got to be true. Oh, this is your story, Bill? Did you want me to do it?
No, I thought you said you were going to cover it at the end.
No, I wanted you to cover it.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
In the church news,
Somebody please cover it.
What's that?
I said, somebody please cover it.
We will.
No, I insist. After you.
The church announces the addition of 55 new missions in 2026. That sounds wonderful. Sounds like the church is adding, because there's so many new missionaries, they're adding missions. And they're bragging that they have tons of missionaries. We went from 65,000 in 2022, and that was the year I said, guys, it's starting to drop off. Remember when Elder Holland said we'll have 100,000 missionaries here soon? They need Elder Holland's revelation prophecy to come true, by the way.
That was like back in 2008. That's a long time ago he said that.
Watch. They're going to hit 100,000 before they decide to start telling the truth about this. And then it'll be a slow decline. But you can't keep going. You can't go, we have 275,000 missionaries this year. Can't do that. So sooner or later, they're going to have to tell the truth. And when they have to make that jump, it's going to hurt a little bit. They said they had 72,000 missionaries in 2023. They have 84,000 missionaries in 2025. Hence, there is a need to add lots of missions to the church. And so you would think you would be seeing missions in places where there just haven't been many missionaries before. Not the case. Rebecca,
Can I ask you a question? Is that going to be the 55, 150 plus 55? Is that going to be 205? That's 150 countries.
Yeah.
506 total missions. So that's with the ad, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but that they're not going to add any countries. They're not going to add any areas. Rebecca sent this image to us in the group. This was interesting, and this is in the online article at the church newsroom at the Deseret News as well. When they announce it, if you look at that highlighted section, the 55 new missions, which will be created by simply adjusting the boundaries of existing missions, will bring the number of church missions around the world to 506. In other words, it's not that there's some drastic increase in the number of missionaries. It's just in areas where there already is a mission and there already are missionaries, they're going to take the 100 missionaries and split them into 2 missions. And now you have 2 missions of 50 missionaries each. This is the game that's being played, I believe. I'd welcome evidence to the contrary. I'm to the point where the church has lied to me so many times that it's their responsibility to prove they're telling the truth. It's not my responsibility to give them the benefit of the doubt. Your guys' thoughts on the number of new missions added?
Well, the first thing I thought when that big number came out, 55, I thought, okay, here we go. President Nelson did the big exciting temple announcements. President Oaks is going to be the big exciting mission announcements. Everybody loves big numbers. But as you said, Bill, this is simply rearranging deck chairs. It's simply a shell game. And as I read through that list of missions, my co-host Landon served in Indiana. He's traumatized still to this day. When he read that his old mission was being divided into another one, Fort Wayne, he just laughed out loud. Exactly what you said, Bill. Same number of missionaries, same number of people interested or not interested, and now 2 missions. But you know what it does accomplish? It's a place to send wealthy LDS couples, right? You got to put them in there. You got to groom them for something bigger. You got to make them feel important.
You're talking about his mission presidents, right?
I'm talking about mission presidents.
Because that's what's hardest on the actual missionaries.
Yes,
they remain the same as
Yep.
far as their number go, but they need more mission presidents.
Yep, they need more mission presidents and senior couples. There's not enough to do in that sense. And so I think that's what they're definitely doing. But yeah, it's all optics and it sounds great and it sounds exciting. But the people on the ground living in it, I think it's going to be more difficult. They're already spread pretty thin. And, like you said, retention is a big problem. So, but I look forward to more announcements. Maybe every conference, it'll be a big, let's announce where the new missions are, right? Something like that.
Oh, yeah. Back in 1979, I went on my mission. In 1980, they split the mission. I went to the Kobe, Japan mission, and the church growing and all. We split the mission and created a new mission. It was the Osaka mission. So I was on the other side of the river when it was created. I went to the Kobe mission, came home from the Osaka mission, and that was cool. But that was actually because it was growing. And usually, my recollection, I said it last week, I'll say it again, there was about 200 missionaries per mission. And this, even if those figures were correct, and if my math is correct, I came up with 168 missionaries for the total number of missions, including the new ones. That's rough, but 168, that's a little bit on the shy side. And that's if their numbers were correct. But this is the actual article. So everybody knows throughout the week, we have a newscast thread, text thread, and we'll send articles that are coming up so that we all know about them. Yes, Rebecca does the lion's share of the texting of those articles. She's great at it. But here's the one that got texted either yesterday or the day before about this. And I read down, and this was the thing that jumped out at me. So I circled it and sent it back to everybody. And that's what you're looking at on your screen. The 55 new missions, which will be created by adjusting the boundaries of existing missions.
Yeah, well, think about numbers. Okay, when a temple was announced, when we were all younger, or you guys joined later, but it meant that area had finally reached a tipping point of righteousness and members and being ready. It meant, an upward trajectory, right? The temple
Mhm.
meant something amazing had happened in that area and they had gotten there, they'd achieved it. Missions too. It used to mean when you opened a new mission, something amazing had happened. The people were ready. There were people beating down the doors to join the church. These are false fronts, right? People think that something is behind them, supporting them, but they're
Mhm.
not. It's simply an arbitrary number thrown out, a
Yes.
mission opened, a temple built, and it's like Field of Dreams. They hope they will come if they
Mhm.
open the mission or build the temple. But it used to be the other way around. People had to kind of work toward it and get there. And it's not that way anymore.
It is like a Potemkin village.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right.
But here's what they do, okay? On the off chance that they're going to tell you the truth, they're not going to just say the sentence, the 55 new missions will be created by adjusting the boundaries of existing missions, period. You take that bad news and you stick it in a clause in the middle of a paragraph the way they did here. So instead of that being the point of the sentence, the point is that it will bring the number of church missions around the world to 506. All right. So
Yep,
let's see
there it
what's
is.
next. Oh my
What's
gosh.
next? Oh, it's your lawsuit. Go into
Yeah,
this. This
newly
is fascinating.
rejected. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. What'd you say?
I said, this is fascinating.
You think so, really?
I do.
What's fascinating to me is that they're still fighting this.
That's what's fascinating.
I
Exactly.
mean, you got to give credit to this lawyer who's not making, well, I don't know. I'm just going to say she's not making any money at this. Okay. Okay. She hopes to, I know, but obviously something more than gain is guiding her. Anyway, newly rejected by appeals court, LDS tithing lawsuit may be headed to U.S. Supreme Court. Emphasis on the may. You got to ask. They've got to accept. It's a writ of certiorari that they're going to file by December. And we'll see if the United States Supreme Court will take this case, because that is the last place to go now in the U.S. judicial system. So this is an article from the Salt Lake Tribune, Tony Simmerod, October 22nd, 2025. 3 plaintiffs and disaffected church members. This is the Gaddy case, whose 2019 lawsuit accuses leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints of fraud and racketeering, will seek to push their case before the U.S. Supreme Court. Their suit, which originated in Utah, asserts that church leaders knowingly misled them and other members on a host of church doctrines, including over how the Book of Mormon, the faith signature scripture, came about. They are not giving up easily. After having their case dismissed in U.S. District Court in Salt Lake City in September 2024, they appealed to the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver. This may be coming back to you. It's hard keeping all the facts of all these different lawsuits in one's head, but they keep getting dismissed. That there's not that many left standing at this point. This may be one of the few. A 3-judge panel at the 10th Circuit denied it as well, finding that the assertions under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, of misrepresentations by church leaders and allegations of fraudulent use of tithing funds required the court to decide questions of faith, namely the truth or falsity of religious beliefs. And they're not going to get into that. So they dismissed it. Attorneys for the Utah-based church have so far successfully argued that the case and others like it pose an untenable threat to First Amendment protections of religion, asking courts to delve into and decide ecclesiastical matters subject to faith. It was the 3rd rejection this year by federal courts of litigation involving the practice in which members donate a 10th of their income to the church. The 9th Circuit in January threw out a similar case brought by wealthy Utahn James Huntsman, seeking to recover some $5 million of his own tithing. In April, a federal judge in Utah tossed out a potential class action case. Let's see here. Can we get rid of that just for a second? Thank you, Bill. In April, a federal judge in Utah tossed out a potential class action lawsuit over tithing brought by 9 plaintiffs. We remember those. After an August dismissal of their case by the 3 judges at the 10th Circuit, plaintiffs Laura Gaddy, Lyle Small, and Leanne Harris, then sought a review of their case by the full appellate court in what is known as an en banc review. That bid, too, was turned down October 1st, with the judges ordering their putative class action suit returned to a lower court in Utah. The Gaddy plaintiffs have now asked that the 10th Circuit's order to be temporarily halted while they filed for a petition for writ of certiorari, seeking to put the suit before the nation's highest court. The writ of certiorari, what it means is this: you have an appeal of right. Your first time, okay? Your first appeal to the next level is you have an appeal of right. After that, you don't have an appeal of right. You have to ask permission from the court that you want to review, and they have to accept it. And that's a writ of certiorari, seeking to put the suit before the nation's highest court. Their Salt Lake City attorney, Kay Birmingham, yay, Kay, has confirmed they intend to petition for U.S. Supreme Court review with a late December filing. Their case, the plaintiffs argue in their latest brief, poses a question of national importance worthy of being considered by the 9 justices. That is, whether the First Amendment's church autonomy doctrine bars civil fraud claims that hinge on a religious organization's intentional concealment and misrepresentation of material historical facts in order to induce and retain church membership and donations. The plaintiffs say the 10th Circuit's rejection of their case widened the church autonomy doctrine beyond its historical and constitutional limits, effectively immunizing a religious corporation from liability for secular. And I really think that the nuts and bolts of it, if I take away all the legal language, is I think that what the courts are saying is that churches can deceive you as much as they want about spiritual religious issues. They just can't deceive you about secular issues. I really think that rule is consistent with all the rulings we've seen from the courts on these cases. Their appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, they contend, will highlight a direct conflict among federal and state courts over the intersection of religious autonomy and neutral legal principles applied to fraud claims. So what this is really saying, there's 2 main reasons that you can ask a court to take your case, or that a higher court's going to take your case. For the Supreme Court, there's got to either be, this has got to be an issue that's really, really pressing, that's important for them to take their time to hear. Or number 2, you're saying there's actually a conflict among the different states and we need you to resolve it. Okay. Or different federal circuits. But we'll see what happens. And it'll be very interesting to find out. I just want to applaud the heck out of Kay Birmingham for having the guts to keep this fight going. She's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't think this one would go on as long as it has. I'm surprised that it's the one.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have one more slide on this?
I'm sorry, Bill. Was it you?
No, that was me. I was saying you have one more slide, I think, on this story.
They are asking the 10th Circuit panel to recall its order, sending the case to the lower court and hold off on any further proceedings until December 30th, when they say they will file their Supreme Court petition. Of course, the 10th Circuit will do that. And then there's something else. So I'll just leave that up there. And that's what's going on.
I have to say, I agree with you, RFM. I've thought about this a lot with all these tithing cases, and there are so many protections for us if a corporation defrauds us or something happens, or there's so many protections. But when it comes to religion, there's no protection. If you fall for something, that's on you. And the court is going to say, we do not rule on religious matters. We do not speak out on religious matters. They never do. They really won't. So,
and that's why if you start a church, you're in gravy.
Yep. I feel like we should start the Newscast Church. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it.
I think it'd be great. Bill? Why not?
The only difference between glass looking as a criminal charge and what churches do is that you've got a statement from the federal government saying you're a tax exempt entity that also is a church.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're not only going to give you beneficial tax status, they're also going to look the other way on anything, basically anything you do. I mean, you can prove this over and over again with the church. Is something Bill and I have done. I know you've done a lot of, Rebecca, too, proving that the church has been deceptive to its members about its origins, its beliefs, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And that based upon that, one could reasonably conclude that those beliefs by the leaders are not closely held. Why do you change your beliefs if you hold them closely? Usually a sign of holding a belief closely is you're not going to change it. So, but it's just like, if you're a church and you're not talking about the church bus or something over here.
The odometer.
Yeah. I mean, it's over here in the spiritual stuff. You can do anything. And I don't think the federal government's going to get involved.
That's why it's so interesting to follow the trajectory of Scientology, because they understood that. And
Yes.
they fought so hard. There are several documentaries about that. It's very interesting to see how they knew that to become a church would be the way forward. And they were able to do it. And they really had less to stand on as far as being a church than the LDS Church. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know. All right, let's move forward a little bit. Oh, look, it's one of my stories. How awesome. Okay, surviving Mormonism. This is Heather Gay. You guys have already probably seen and heard about this. This is a new documentary that's coming out the second week of November. It's going to be on Bravo. I heard her mention this when she was at Thrive last year, and she's going to be sitting down in a 3-episode series, mini-series, and talking to people about their experiences surviving Mormonism. And some of the experiences are pretty painful and pretty difficult, as you can imagine. I think we'll play a little clip from it, Bill, just so you can get a sense of the tone of this documentary. And you guys can all look up the trailer. It's on YouTube. It's everywhere.
The things I learned while we were filming this shocked me to my core. The real secret lives are much darker, deeper, and more tragic.
This is still going on. This has to stop.
I spent my life being someone I wasn't.
My earliest memories are of abuse.
Had they taken action, could it have saved me?
I just feel overwhelmed and horrified.
Surviving Mormonism with Heather Gay. Watch the premiere Tuesday, November 11th after Salt Lake City, and stream all episodes next day on Peacock.
Yep. So November 11th. Had you guys heard of this, that this was coming out, or only because I sent it to you?
I'd heard.
You'd heard about it, yeah. And you were muted at RFM, so I think you said you might have heard about it.
I said maybe you.
Maybe me.
just
That's
you.
right. So anyway, it looks, it looks like they're going to tackle some of the real issues, some of the real things that happen, and people that are survivors. Hence the title, Surviving Mormonism. Well, what happened is that, let's see if we can go back to the slides. Oh my goodness.
Jasmine happened.
Jasmine
Is this
happened.
the part where
First-
Jasmine comes into the story now,
Yeah, I'm
Rebecca?
going to go back to that. I'm going to
Okay.
start here. So this has actually been covered in a lot of different places, but this particular article says, what does surviving Mormonism look like to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? So there are memes appearing everywhere about surviving church life, right? They're beginning to trickle in and then turned into a fire hose by, last week. Jared Bell, who lives in Utah County, posted a photo from his doorbell of a man in his congregation holding a plate of cookies on his porch. So this is what they're doing. They're trying to turn that title around, hashtag surviving Mormonism, and sort of make light of what could you possibly have to survive? What could there possibly be, right? So here it says surviving Mormonism, but it's just, that's how you frame it. And then you say something completely innocuous in Mormonism. Surviving Mormonism, but it's just my minister bringing my cookies and checking up on how my family is doing, right? So he goes on to say, Bill told the Deseret News, I wanted to
Can I just
capture.
say something?
Yes, please do.
It's not a freaking minister, okay? Are they just
Well-
trying to confuse Christians in other religions or people in no religion at all?
It's
That this is the head
dishonest.
of their congregation?
If they
It's the
tell
guy
you
who
it's a
lives next door.
minister, it's a minister. If they told you it was a minister, if it was a home teacher and they told you that, that's what it was. You just have to check in every morning to see what the verbiage is, because the way you move the masses is you change the language. It's very subtle.
But
So
they did it so that you make the entire world go, oh, that's just their pastor dropping off cookies.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the home teacher, which all non-believers go, what the hell's a home teacher?
Yeah, no, I saw this really in action in temple buildings, right? The residents that would contact me and my co-host Landon, they'd go, well, it is the bishop who's talking to us. I'm like, okay, number one thing you need to know, That means nothing. He's the electrician next door. It is not a bishop, right? Those terms are confusing and they're given more authority and weight than they should be. So anyway, so this is kind of a smokescreen. Bill told the Deseret News, I just wanted to capture what it really means to be surviving Mormonism, you know? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mean? What does it mean to really survive Mormonism? Having to deal with lovely people all the time? It's really tough. Them always being concerned about me and praying for my family and I. People that feel a desire to serve their neighbors. Can you imagine how horrible this is, right? He added jokingly, we really have to claw our way out of the loving, sharing, and inviting nature of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes, we do.
Now,
but I'm glad to say I finally made it.
You finally made it. I would like to say, I am glad that these people have not experienced some of the things that the rest of us had. That is wonderful for them. I don't know, however, if it's true, if they're sheltered, if they're not recognizing things. You know, I feel like maybe someday they will have a family member that something happens to. And I thought about my parents were like this. They just lived a very perfect Mormon life. They were so happy the entire time. And what's interesting is that I was not living a perfect Mormon life. I had some unfortunate things happen. Let's just say that. And I kind of knew I can't tell my parents about this because they're in this perfect Mormon life, right? They were surviving Mormonism with cookies and that kind of thing. I wasn't. My hashtag would be something like surviving Mormonism, but it's really me being told about masturbation when I was 13 years old by my bishop alone in a locked room, right? Those kinds of things that people go through. So I'm happy that some people never have had to experience these, but you cannot trivialize what many other people have experienced and have lasting trauma from. So here are some of these examples. Surviving Mormonism.
You can, and apparently it's gone viral.
Apparently it's gone viral. And their concept is that when anybody Googles surviving Mormonism to try to find information about this documentary, you're going to run into all of this goodness, right? All this amazing goodness and funniness. So things like surviving Mormonism, but it's just me being told I can't create the most comfortable recliner. It's just me telling me I have to go get the cart under that scary part under the stage. I mean, these are funny, right? It's about the ins and outs of being Mormon.
These are not funny. I haven't seen a funny one yet.
Okay, well, anyway, so you can look, it's just me having to carry a bunch of chairs to impress the girls, that kind of thing. It's just me having to decorate the vehicle's trunk for the chili cook-off. It just kind of goes on and on. What about finding garments? You guys can freeze the screen on all this and look at them trying to get the tank top garment. They're just kind of making light of Mormonism in that way. And again, I just thought, all of you honestly not know one person that had a difficult experience? I just find it so hard to believe. And then RFM will attest to this.
Rebecca, can I do this?
Sure.
I just want to go through here. Surviving Mormonism, but surviving Mormonism. Oh, but not surviving Mormonism.
Yeah. Oops. Okay. Yes. His parents did not survive Mormonism. No, that was an unfortunate placement there. So no, and it's true. And RFM and Bill will attest that I don't get too angry very often about things, but I did text you after I saw
you were hot
this
under the
video
collar.
That the lovely Jasmine had put out, and
you had some really spicy things to say about Jasmine in that text thread too.
Thought, do you really not understand that there are people that are in incredible pain and they're really trying to move past things? And when they say surviving, they mean they are surviving, or they barely survived, or they're trying to survive. So you can play as much as you think we need to of this, Bill, but I don't know. This just really got to me. I'm so glad these people have no concept of what some of the rest of us lived or know people that lived. But I, have some charity and compassion for those that are trying to tell their stories.
I'm going to push play, but I want to say one more thing. I just thought of an idea. I know a very fast way that we get the church to change its rhetoric again and change minister either back to home teacher to something else entirely. If everybody who was hurt or abused in the church would say they were touched inappropriately by their Mormon minister, or were hurt by their Mormon minister, or were lied to by their Mormon minister, if the post-Mormons would start to tell the narrative using the church's language, I have a funny feeling they wouldn't want the word minister sticking out there for too long.
That's an interesting thought.
All right. Anyway, here's this.
Have you guys seen the Latter-day Saint response to this new show, Surviving Mormonism? It is unhinged in the best way possible. Bravo just dropped a trailer for their new show. This is a 3-part docuseries called Surviving Mormonism, starring Heather Gay from The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And it documents like traumatic instances people have had with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But the best part is how Latter-day Saints are reacting to the show, because instead of getting hurt about the misrepresentation or getting snarky about it, we're turning the mirror on ourselves. We're using self-deprecating humor, and we started a viral trend documenting what average Latter-day Saints feel like is the hardest part of surviving Mormonism, and the results are amazing. Things like surviving Mormonism, but it's just me trying to refrain from cooking anything in the kitchen that is only meant for warming and serving food, which if you're Latter-day Saint and you've seen the sign above the door of the kitchen, you know that's hilarious. Surviving Mormonism, and it's just me in Sunday school trying to figure out which way the sign-up sheet should be going. Yeah, yes. Surviving Mormonism, but it's just me mentally preparing for next year when I have 9 a.m. church. Or surviving Mormonism, and it's just me waiting until winter or cold or famine to eat meat. Shout out to Dr. Covenants 89, the Word of Wisdom. Surviving Mormonism, and it's just me having to redo the sacrament prayer. Just go onto X and search Surviving Mormonism, and instead of seeing any promotional...
Yeah.
I don't know if you can play the whole thing, right?
We can. I'm happy to.
Well, whatever.
Okay, if you want to play the whole thing. I'm just glad you explained the kitchen joke, because otherwise it wouldn't have been funny.
It would have been funny. But again, I'm just saying the laughing manner, saying that the stories that you might see on Heather Gay's documentary are misrepresentations, instead of recognizing that these are real people's stories that are, and somebody put in the chat, some people don't survive Mormonism. And that is true. So again, benefit of the doubt. I hope these people don't know anybody that's ever had an experience, and I hope they never do. But they need to recognize that a lot of us did have those experiences, and we know people who did. And so just to laugh, I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way. That's why I had to text you guys. I just said, this just got under my skin. I don't know. Thoughts?
Okay, truth or dare. Back when I was white knuckling it in Mormonism, I would have made the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I would have done that because I still would have been defending the church. I'm going to guess at least 50% of these people have got real issues that they're dealing with caused by the Mormon church, but they're doing it anyway because that's what you do when you're a Mormon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll add this. My Mormon experience in my ward was pretty dang good. I felt like for the most part, good people. I enjoyed being around them. I look forward to seeing them on Sunday. What most of these people are testifying of is their Sunday experience. I'm going to grant that they might be having the time of their life. What isn't acknowledged here is what happens from the top-down leadership. The dishonesty, the safe spaces for abuse, the financial fraud. You can go on and on and on. It is what the top 15 have done themselves and the culture that they've created in the church. And as many people as are using self-deprecating humor about the not really bad things that are sort of funny and uncomfortable in Mormonism, there are just as many of us on this side who could name specific harms that the church has done. And those harms are absolutely valid and legitimate and could be documented. And they are much more significant in the negative than the nonsensical things these folks are trying to make as jokes in the positive.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. I even started making a list, but it's just me crying because my bishop said if I don't pay my back tithing, I'm going to lose my job at BYU. But it's just me, all those things. And then I realized that was sort of the self-defeating thing to do, but I'm like you, Bill. I had wonderful experiences. I had good friends, but then there are those things that sometimes when you get older, you look back and realize, wow, yeah, that was not great, So I don't know. Everybody keep an eye out for that documentary on the 11th. It's a 3-part series. I'm not sure if all 3 are dropping at once, and we'll see. And now you will understand when you see hashtag surviving Mormonism, but it is just, you'll understand what that means. And maybe you guys can add your own experiences to that hashtag. I don't know.
Under the heading of surviving Mormonism, whose story's next?
Yeah, I think
you guys
that was terrible. Oh my gosh. Maybe we should edit
my
that out.
segue because somebody didn't survive Mormonism here.
Oh gosh.
And all right, this was the article, and there are several places that covered this. This actually happened back in 2019, but he just got convicted, and now they're checking to see whether he is sane or not. So that's the part of the legal process they're in. So this says, OC man brutally killed his parents, their housekeeper. Jury finds, was he insane at the time?
I'm guessing that's Orange County.
Orange County, yep. Newport Beach, California. So yes. So let me just read this here. So in 2019, 34-year-old Camden Burton Nicholson brutally murdered his parents, Richard and Kim Nicholson. That's them in the bottom right. And their longtime housekeeper, Maria Morse, at the family's upscale Newport Beach, California home. And you see the home there. Prosecutors say the murders came just hours. Prosecutors say the murders came just hours after Nicholson was released from a 72-hour psychiatric hold and followed his parents' ultimatum that he enter treatment for mental health and addiction issues. Nicholson's earlier life looked very different. He grew up in the local Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints community, served briefly on a mission, but was sent home early and had once been an Eagle Scout. You're not once an Eagle Scout. You're always an Eagle Scout, right?
Yes, this article was not written by a scouter.
No. Had once been an Eagle Scout and a varsity golfer. After returning from his mission, he began showing signs of erratic behavior, drug use, delusions, and a spiral that led to repeated psychiatric interventions. And I'll just note to the audience that, for instance, schizophrenia, which I think is the most horrendous thing in the world that somebody could have, that would be a living nightmare. It almost always turns up sometime between the ages of 18 and 25. And so I'll just note that there are really serious mental conditions that just come on. The onset is in the late teenage, early adult years, and it just catches everyone off guard and by surprise. The killings themselves were gruesome and deliberate. According to trial testimony, Nicholson ambushed his father, stabbing him repeatedly, then attacked his mother when she returned home, and the next morning killed the housekeeper, hiding her body in a plastic tub in the pantry. Afterwards, he used his father's credit card and car for recreational spending, then called 911, claiming self-defense. The story resurfaced in the news recently because the criminal trial of Camden Burton Nicholson had finally reached a verdict. A jury found him guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder, which then triggered the next phase of determining whether he was criminally insane at the time. And because of the history of being in a mental health facility, because of even his parents noting the erratic behavior and the delusions and stuff, again, we'll see where this goes, but I have to imagine that he will be found to have been insane at the time of these occurred. So
he's sane enough to use his father's credit card.
Yeah.
For recreational spending. He's sane enough to call, even though ridiculously after he's already done that, and you can document the timing of it, and claiming self-defense. He is a guy who was sane under the law.
And the killings were spaced far apart. I mean, that's kind of interesting too. It's not like a crime of passion, all at once. There was a good amount of time in between each one, though.
And parents, I get. I had parents. Yeah. They were great, but everybody has their flaws.
Yeah, but the housekeeper.
The housekeeper. Yeah. What did the housekeeper do to deserve that? I'll just note, there he is in the top right corner. When he was a little younger and everything was a little less of an issue. And then you see him in the bottom left there when he gets, I think that's the mugshot photo. And that's when he's after the crimes were committed. So there's that. Okay. I think that's it for that story. I don't know if you have anything to add to it, but I saw that pop up in the news last week and thought because this kid had been on a Mormon mission, it might at least be worth mentioning.
Well, I think coming home early does not do anyone any favors mental health wise. I have seen this personally, and it can be very difficult. Like you said, it's a touchy age group anyway, where things can happen, and a mission can sometimes exasperate that. And coming home early, feeling like you're shunned by your community, if that's your experience, yeah, it can cause some real problems. So I don't know. It's a sad story. All right.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch this game?
No, I don't watch any football.
Oh my gosh. What? Do you know that BYU is in the top 10?
I'm busy watching myself on Saturday evenings on the Radio Free Mormon premiere, so I can be there with everybody who's in the live chat having a great time.
You're right. I'm telling you, this is looking like my freshman year at BYU, which was 1984. BYU was number 1 in the nation. Bo Diddley Tech, Bryant Gumbalt. I mean, I was just telling my co-host Landon, I remember the day I was in child development class at BYU, huge lecture hall. Somebody came running in the back door and said, "We're number 1." The cheers erupted. The books were thrown in the air. And then he said, and Bryant Gumball called us. Did I just say Gumball? I think I did.
I think you've been saying it several times.
I'm so sorry. You know who I'm talking about.
Just call them gumballs and be done with it.
The sportscaster. Anyway, he has said, "Who are they?" Bo Diddley Tech, and everybody had that righteous anger, gotta get him, and it was a very exciting time, and I think we're headed that way again. But the big holy war, the rivalry, there's been all kinds of commentary on this. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you just to say?
Sure, go ahead.
Remember when just earlier this year we had not one but 2 news stories about how BYU was having quarterback problems this year?
There were several stories, yes.
Looks like they're doing okay in spite of it.
Yeah, I feel like they've repented and moved on. That's exactly it. So they won this game. I actually watched a little of it and then fell asleep. I thought, oh, Utah's up. And then when I woke up in the morning, it was like, oh gosh, okay, I guess it just didn't work out. But there's been some.
Did they win? Oh, so yeah, University of Utah was up, but they lost.
Yes, that's exactly.
I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
Yes, University of Utah was up, so I felt it was safe to go to sleep. And then when I woke up, BYU had won. That's what I'm trying to say. Yes. But anyway, some interesting things happened here. So one of the big controversies, like I said, had to do with reverence. Here's the headline: Utah football player apologizes for warming up during the prayer at BYU after Senator Mike Lee and other fans criticize him. So what we're talking about,
Rebecca, I've never been to a BYU football game. Do they all announce that we're going to have an opening prayer throughout the stadium and everybody's supposed to bow their heads? Is that how it goes?
Oh, they pray for everything. When I was at BYU, I went to a B-52s concert and they started with prayer. Please,
so there's somebody who's announcing it.
Back, Lord, please. Yeah, no, they start everything with a prayer. Yeah, everything starts with a prayer. Okay. And everyone who goes there knows that you take a minute and you stop, right? But this guy, he's the kicker. When does he have a chance to warm up? He needs to be on the field. Yeah. Usually the rest of the players are on there all warming up. So they say thousands of fans bowed their head and closed their eyes to pray, but Utah kicker Dylan Curtis continued his warm up. So the microphone is going, thank you for this day. And he's kicking the ball. He's kicking the ball, right? How can God possibly hear our prayer if he's kicking the ball, right?
Yeah.
So somebody who was also not closing their eyes during the prayer filmed this, right? Made a little video and posted it, right? Kind of saying, this is so disrespectful. And then who picked up on it? Who do you think we're talking about? We're talking about Mike Lee, right? And he reposted it and he said, would you say it's poor form to do this during the pregame opening prayer at a religious university? Right? So he's kind of stirring the pot there. And he even went on to say, I didn't take the video, because some people answered back and said, well, what about the person filming the video? I didn't take the video, he wrote, but honestly, at least whoever did it wasn't being disruptive by doing so, right? Because in his mind, somebody warming up on the field during all the pregame stuff going on is disruptive. Hard to say the same about that player, right? So this went on for a day or so.
President Eyring can keep his eyes open during all the prayers and general conference. Why can't this guy warm up a little bit? He's going to have to be kicking off in just a few seconds, isn't he?
That's exactly it. And I mean, my first thought was, it's a huge, long pregame thing going on. There's announcements and also, maybe he had earbuds in. Nobody knows what was going on.
He got a helmet on.
Have even recognized that there was a prayer going on. And so he didn't say anything for a couple days, but once Mike Lee put it out there and everybody was weighing in, he said on Wednesday after the game, right? This is the kicker himself, said, I've been debating for a few days whether I make a comment on me kicking during the prayer, right? Thank you. There he is. I mean, look at this cute kid, right? It's just a kid kicking during the prayer. And at first I decided just to let it blow over, but I realized that isn't the right thing to do, he wrote. Yeah, because a bunch of crazy people are giving you a bunch of backlash on it. So he took the upper hand, and he said, took the high road. I just wanted to apologize to anybody I offended. I really didn't mean anything negative by it, and especially didn't have harsh intentions. I was just warming up when my coaches told me to warm up.
That's the thing. His coach told him to warm up. This is just like you said, it's a kid playing a college sport.
Yep.
He's doing what his coaches told him. By the way, I'll just note the difference between him and LDS church leaders. He's willing to apologize.
Yep.
It's amazing.
No, he did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. But I think seeing people being upset is like, I'm going to cool this down and just say, I'm sorry. You say that, when you're faced with kind of this crazy thing. So, but no, his coach said, get out there, take a couple kicks, right? Do it. And so if anything, they should be going after the coach. How dare you disrespectfully send your player onto the field? So interestingly, I told you this got bigger. A former Utah kicker, Andy Phillips, who is LDS, a member of the church, he came to Curtis's defense and he said, Mike, come on, you're a senator, Phillips told the Salt Lake Tribune. You've got a huge following, you're a public figure, and you're taking time out of your day to call this 18-year-old kid out and making an assumption about something that maybe is fair or maybe not fair. He said a kicker has a hard time finding an opportunity to warm up because you have to, be out there on the field when all the other players are often out there. And also he said that kicking routines are different every time you have an away game. So he says we have to have some empathy. And also what I just said, maybe he had his earbuds in. He definitely maybe said to himself, I'm just going to go kick a couple times and I'll be ready to go. He also made the point, it's also the beauty of this country. He doesn't have to participate in any sort of form of worship if he doesn't want to. It also doesn't mean that he shouldn't be respectful of it. So it's interesting.
Do the Mormons think their stadium is a freaking chapel?
They're saying a prayer over the loudspeaker, which again, how reverent can that really be? I mean, honestly, like I said, they will pray. They prayed at a Chicago concert I went to. They prayed at the B-52s. They pray at everything. Yeah. So that was any other comments on that? And then I'll move on to the next exciting thing that happened during the game.
I think this guy who looks like Johnny Whitaker in Sigmund and the Sea Monsters.
Oh, I love that.
I think he needs to file a complaint that the prayer was interrupting his warm-up.
Yeah, that could be it too.
I don't know.
I mean, it's a football game. At least he's doing something that has something to do with why everybody's there.
Exactly.
It's in a football stadium.
Yep.
Sorry.
I don't know how to say this without saying a little bit of unfair language, but it's I can't come up with any other words to do it. I think of Mike Lee in the same vein as I think of Carden Ellis. Like they're both just douche canoes, and I don't have a better phrase.
Can you say that on the air?
I had one, I'd use it, but they both just come off to me as just pompous jerks.
Well, they're pompous, they're jerks, and they're always dying to take offense at something, so that they can assume victim status, because being the fragile one is the acme in our society, right, Bill? Being the victim is to be on the top of the mountain.
Yeah. But I am really surprised that the coach didn't weigh in and say, oh, yeah, I sent my kicker out there. I mean, he's not going to go randomly do something on his own. He's going to follow his coach at an away game, and he's going to do what he's instructed to do, which is what he said. So anyway, it was an interesting take. So another really interesting event that happened at the same BYU game, right? So they won and everybody stormed the field, right? That's very exciting. Apparently they tried to tear down the goalpost like they often do, but the security had made a circle around it, so they weren't able to do that. So, and then it comes out that the CEO of Crumbl, has volunteered to pay any fine that might be incurred by this, because typically it's like a $50,000 fine that you might get. So, but then some articles came out and it was a little bit different than the CEO seeing everybody storm the field and saying, you know what, I'm going to pay. This is what happened. It says Crumbl CEO and self-described BYU supporter Jason McGowan offered to pay potential fines over fans who stormed the field after BYU's win at the rivalry game against Utah Saturday. I was on the field, he said, at the time when everything was going down. And there was a lot of energy and excitement. So I leaned over and I said, hey, what if I took care of the fine so everybody can just celebrate together, McGowan said. And of course, then the fans stormed the field and it was just a very exciting moment. So he kind of offered before they did it and volunteered to pay, up to $50,000. So, that was kind of exciting. I know I had to put pictures of cookies everywhere.
I'm just glad that he did that before I did it.
Yeah, exactly. So what's interesting is that there was no fine. They looked at it and they determined that safety protocols for a field storm were followed, whatever that would be. Maybe going the right way or not jumping over things, but there was no fine. So this is the interesting and cool part. So the Crumbl CEO said, once he found out there's no fine, he said, so here's the play, okay? Instead of a fine, that money is going to go straight to the players through NIL, right?
So they're going to buy some new players?
They're going to buy some new players, yep, so they can charge a lot of money to come see a basketball game. Yeah, a scrimmage. But then he said, and so first of all, he's going to fund more players through NIL. And then because of your overwhelming support, inspired by Kalani's love for his opponent's coach, every bit of the student lunch debt in Provo City and Salt Lake City districts for all the schools was wiped out this morning. Love you, Cougar Nation. So that is amazing. That's incredible right there. School lunch debt paid off for everybody, because if you're a student and you get school lunch and you have too much debt, they won't give you any more lunch. Like you're a little kid and you're sitting there and you don't know that your parents didn't pay or couldn't pay. I think they might give you a roll and some milk or something, but you do not get lunch anymore. So he wiped out everybody's debt, and that's amazing. And first, he funded getting some new players. So yeah, take that however you want, but it's a good thing about the lunch.
I hate hearing stories about this because it makes it harder for me to hate billionaires.
I know. It's true. But no, Crumbl cookies are amazing. He's done a great service to humanity. Let's just say that. So any final thoughts? And then we'll move on to, is this your story, Bill? I really did not have a chance to read this one today, and I was very curious about it.
All right. Any thoughts from you guys on the last one? Otherwise, yeah. I'll continue. So this was the Salt Lake Tribune. As top LDS leaders age, they move closer to the, quote, zone of dementia, unquote. Gordon Hinckley and Russell Nelson were outliers, historian says, while a number of other presidents grappled with diminished capacity. This was Peggy Fletcher Stack. The article from the Salt Lake Tribune examines the fact that the top leaders of the LDS Church, such as President Dallas Oaks, age 93, and his counselors are in their 80s and 90s. They are now very old and serving until death. Traditionally, the church uses a serve until you die model, which is what you need when you don't have revelation. You have to have a consistent model that works every time. Model for its president and apostles, which means aging leaders are almost inevitable. Historian Gregory Prince points out that once you move into your mid-80s and beyond, you enter what he calls the zone of dementia, where the risk of cognitive decline becomes significant. By the way, Gregory Prince is not only a historian, he's also a medical scientist. And outside of Mormonism, he actually became a renowned person for coming up with the cure to some childhood illness. I don't remember what it was, but he was the major impetus behind that. So questions the church should consider: does having most of its top leaders in their 80s and 90s weaken its ability to lead, respond to global change, avoid power vacuums when someone is no longer capable? We saw that when Monson was late in the stages of dementia, and Nelson seemed to, as I think president of the 12 at the time, seemed to be influencing what direction the church was going in. While old people certainly bring valuable wisdom and decades of experience, the Trib article suggests that the system may need fresh thinking, such as setting an age limit or adopting emeritus status for apostles in order to help the church stay nimble, credible, and healthy in the long term. By the way, this was Hugh B. Brown's idea. He suggested that they go into emeritus status somewhere in their 70s And the rest of the brethren said, no way, Hugh. And in fact, as punishment, you're going to leave the first presidency for coming up with such great ideas.
Well,
Yeah,
that and
they
the whole
adopted it
kinda
for the
lit
general authority.
priesthood ban thing.
Yeah, they adopted it for the general authorities. They do age out at 70, but nobody else.
Yeah. This is my comment here, but when it is the very same old men who decide if it's good for old men to be in charge, changes like this will never be easy.
Got to come from the top down.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you're not going to get those guys who, whether people want to believe it or not, love to be in charge and love to lead. You're not going to get those guys to say, yeah, we'll step aside and let younger people run this thing. And then I'll just note too, this article, I think, sort of went in conjunction with that one. This is another Salt Lake Tribune article. Mormon Land did a podcast, and they say here it would take a bold move by a bold LDS president to change how succession works in the church.
They should have said it would take a bold move by an old LDS president.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the funny thing, right? Like the guy who would need to change it would have to be a guy who benefited by the way the system currently works. That's a tough thing. That's a tough cookie to crack. So I'll just say here, this week's episode of the Mormon Land podcast offers a strong follow-up to the Tribune's article that we just went over, a critique of aging top leadership in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The host, plural, argue that, and again, that's Peggy Fletcher Stack, Noyce is the guy's last name, and then sometimes they have a third person on there as well. So David Noyce, Peggy Fletcher Stack are the two main hosts for that. Sometimes there's a third person. The host argue that a process change in how the next prophet is chosen demands bold leadership and fresh thinking, and such clearly indicates that the current process requires little to no revelation at all in order to work. We've noted this several times in the last few weeks with a change in the president of the church, but they want to always point to revelation. But again, Oakes knew immediately upon the death of President Nelson that he was the next person in charge. There was no revelation required.
Well, I don't expect they'll ever make it 70 because that would put them on a par with the 70. So maybe they could say, well, max out at 75 or 80.
Yeah, we could all hope. I think young blood would be very helpful in a system that seems to be plagued by old leadership and old ideas. So any thoughts from you guys?
Oh, I think they're getting young blood. I have some theories. No, I am so glad that this is getting more scrutiny. You know, the first time I remember even thinking or hearing about this was Steve Benson, right? Who came out in the 80s and said, my grandpa, Ezra Taft, he doesn't love you like they're telling you he loves you or know you. He doesn't even know his own name. He was basically trying to say he has dementia. He does not, is not thinking about the saints. He doesn't know anything. That's the first time we kind of were made aware of that. And then, it happened again, right? You have Monson. It kept happening, and you realize power vacuum, it's a huge danger. It's a huge problem, and things that are not great can happen. So I am really happy that they're looking at this, but I don't know. I've been looking into the stats on the ages. My co-host Landon's very curious about this. These men are in the upper 5 percentile of people who live. That the fact that they are all so old, I'm almost positive they're getting very specialized medical treatments. And I also had the thought the other day, how many of them have outlived their wives? Usually it's the other way around. And this shows me that they are getting some care that is off the charts. And if you really believe that God chooses the next prophet by who passes away and who survives, that shouldn't be the case. That's something interesting to think of too. But I think there's more scrutiny on this. Maybe more outcry about, this is just not healthy for any organization. And maybe more, I don't know, as the public becomes more aware of it, it's embarrassing maybe a little bit. You know what I mean? That
maybe
you have
it's just not that stressful being an apostle.
That who?
Maybe it's just not that stressful being an apostle.
No, they are beating all the actuary charts by a lot. They are way beyond. You would expect way more in that 12 of people passing away, and they just don't. They're all living into their 90s and their wives are all dying at a regular, respectable 85 or whatever. So it's somebody who knows more about this than I do. You should look into it because I think it's really interesting. Any more on that, Bill, or are we done? Oh, there we go. Temples. All right. Moving on from aging prophets to temples. This is interesting. This shows you how real time the newscast is. I have this slide about the Fairview, Texas temple bench trial that is supposed to be on Wednesday, October 29th. And I just got a text from somebody in the city saying, nope, that's not happening. It has been put off until November 24th. To allow the citizens group and the LDS Church to come up with some kind of an agreement. Because again, we won't go into it, but the citizens group say this wasn't passed legally. There needed to be more of a supermajority vote based on how they calculated, the areas where people could protest. It sounds like the church will not waver at all on the steeple height, but they possibly might waver on those 2 parking lot lights that are facing directly into residents' home. So isn't that
the two that got overlooked in the final plan?
Yes.
And then the new mayor asked if the LDS Church would simply recognize that was an oversight and give on that, since they're shining right into neighbors' windows, and the church gave them the finger.
Yeah, but now it looks like they might be willing to turn those parking lots somewhere other than the bedrooms and living rooms of the residents. But the steeple, it still has to be as tall as it is. So we'll see what happens. But there's going to be a little more, negotiation, and that's going to happen close to Thanksgiving. So that is Fairview. Interesting news on Heber here. As we know, there was a stop work, an injunction, and they were supposed to have stopped work. Right. But according to the residents there, they are still hauling in trucks of gravel and patting down dirt. Some people have said to me, that isn't building, that's preparing the ground. So maybe there's kind of a fine line. But the church said back in early October, we are going to get an appeal to stop. We're going to take an appeal to stop this injunction or to overturn it to the Supreme Court. And we're going to do it as fast as we can. We have a date for that now. That is December the 8th. So I don't know if you want to speak for a second, RFM, what that means, where there's an injunction and then are taking it somewhere else to get another ruling to be able to build. Am I explaining it correctly?
I think that what it is that the ruling of the court remains the same, but also they're putting an injunction on the church to not build, right?
Stop, right. Until the lawsuit is decided from the residents at the Supreme Court level, you can't build. And the church is saying, oh, yes, we can. We're taking that to the Supreme Court even before the lawsuit gets there.
Right. Because that's the part they want undone, is this injunction, so they can keep building, because this church seems to have a very optimistic view of how these lawsuits are going to shake out. Because if you keep building while the lawsuit's going on and then the lawsuit turns out against you, then you've got to tear it down.
You do, but so far that hasn't happened. Look at Cody. Right. They built and built and built at a furious pace after their stealth groundbreaking, and the Supreme Court said, yep, you're good, keep building. So I think they're just extraordinarily confident. So we'll keep watching Heber. That is what's happening
there. It's not
there.
like their money, really.
Exactly. But I do think it's kind of funny that they said, we're going to take care of this as soon as possible at the Supreme Court, and then their court date is not for another 2 months. So from October. So we'll see what happens. But the residents are reporting that, trucks are coming in and there's work on the ground, but not actually something being built up. Now it's interesting because remember they were digging and had already hit water. There's going to be all that pumping of 1 million gallons a day. We'll see how this all goes, but we'll keep an eye on it. So, okay, the Linden Temple, and I saw this being discussed in the chat a little bit. There was finally some new news on the Linden Temple. I had reported a couple of weeks ago about how I overheard a conversation, right, about the Linden Temple, some problems inside the temple with something that was built. They had to redo, working on something inside, some kind of a problem. And also this problem about the temple workers, that 1,000 temple workers will have to move from the Mount Timpanogos temple, right, and go and now service the Linden Temple. And so the Mount Timpanogos temple is going to be in desperate need next year of 1,000 more temple workers. So, and this is the stake, because this is my area where they had the brilliant idea that instead of not calling young couples with kids to work in the temple, we're going to call them and we're going to suggest that they each take a different shift. The wife goes on Tuesday nights and leaves the kids home with dad. And then the dad goes on Thursday night. And by doing that, their family will be stronger. Yeah, brilliant
Oh,
idea.
sure. The less the parents are in the home, the stronger the family.
Yeah.
That's what I always say.
Yeah, less they're in the home together and they have to go out and do something else. It's all going to work out great. But again, I cannot tell you how big this temple is and how bright this temple. If you live in this area, make a little field trip over there. This is a tiny residential area. I mean, the houses are big, you know, your typical 4-story Utah, but this temple is off the charts. And as they were mentioning in the chat, this temple has been lit already every night for almost 6 months. It is not open.
How much
And
does
it's
that
been
cost?
lit like this for almost 6 months, which makes everybody go, what is happening? And why does it have to be lit? Finally, today, there is an announcement, right? When is this open house? It's got to be soon because it's already been lit for 6 months. Oh, it looks like it's in March and April.
Oh,
It's not going to be opened until April.
that's another
So
5 months.
another 5 months. This is taking
A
forever.
year.
And
This
again,
will be lit for a year. How
I
much does
can
that
be-
cost, Rebecca?
Yep. I have no idea, but all I can say is the birds in that area. I know you make fun of me for talking about the birds, but I'm not kidding. This is an eyesore. How lit up this temple is. I can't even show you. Can you kind of see the mountains back there in that
Yeah, I
picture?
can. Well, the birds aren't getting
beautiful,
any
and yet
sleep,
you-
I can tell
yeah.
you that.
Yeah, you don't see them. And I've seen posts from people going, this shines right in my bedroom window. My kids can't sleep, you know. And I understand that because I had to buy blackout curtains for the Mount Timpanogos temple
Oh
for
my
my
God.
kids. So
I'm in
these are
Washington
bright.
State and I can see it from here.
Yep, I feel like you can. So yeah, anyway, so something to look forward to. It will be up and running. They will have solved whatever issue is going on in there. I don't know exactly what it is. And the issue with getting people to staff it, and there it will be. So that's the Linden Temple for you. I wanted to talk for a second about the San Jose LDS Temple. This is being built in Sunnyvale. And it has been under review by the city of Sunnyvale. Is it Vale or Dale? Vale, Sunnyvale, for almost a year now. It has gone back and forth 3 times. And I have to give a shout out to Sunnydale. I love this. Somebody kind of tagged me on this. They have got their ducks in a row. This is what a city should be doing. So they are saying things like, first of all, the existing stake center there is going to be demolished, right? I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they're doing this a lot. They're demolishing stake centers to build temples. I don't know if that shows where the priorities are, but that is what they're doing. So in this review cycle, the staff in the city sends back notes saying, hey, we need more information on this, or you weren't clear on this. These notes are fantastic. Okay. So the height, the church is requesting 129-foot building height just because, you know, it looks good, right? This is the same kind of thing they said to Fairview from the reviewers. Thank you for providing a response. You know, it appears that one of the key justifications for the height variance, making it so dang tall, is due to the golden ratio. And yes, they use this almost everywhere they go. Please provide a more detailed explanation to help staff understand how or why the golden ratio would mathematically require a building to be 129 feet. I find that hilarious because they're absolutely right. If you've ever seen the movie Spinal Tap, the golden ratio, I mean, you know, Stonehenge can be this tall and still be all in proportion. So that really doesn't explain why you need it to be 129 feet. And these people in the town on the staff, they're calling him out on that, right? They're also saying that your drawings aren't correct. You're not factoring in the heights of curbs and different elevations. Please correct that. I know, I just got such a kick out of this. This is where they really got my stamp of approval. Lighting. Please demonstrate, says the city of Sunnyvale, how the project aligns with the biological report's requirements, including bird-safe lighting requirements. Yeah, as described on page 39, i.e., no uplighting, no spotlights, no shield light to cast downward onto the area to be illuminated, turn off the lights at night, or incorporate blinds. Please provide a rendering showing how the building would be illuminated at night. I can give you a rendering. Let's look at Linden. And, you know, why can't you turn the lights off before 11 p.m.? So they are asking all the hard questions, and they've been doing this all along and sending it back and forth and back and forth. They also say that there's going to be a peer review of the biological evaluation, and they are going to take bird and migratory bird and animal safety seriously in Sunnyvale. So again, I say, go Sunnyvale, right? This is how it should be. The floor plans, right? So the church is telling them that the parking is sort of contingent on what happens in the different rooms and how they'll be used. So they're saying, please provide a floor plan and please explain the various usages of the rooms. They are not clearly marked. I'd like to see how that goes over. What exactly do you do in here, right? If we've all gone to a temple open house, we know they just kind of go, move on past. We're not really going to talk about it. So anyway, this kind of goes on and on. But the bottom line is, even here, this is a really good one. Finally, there are a number of environmental reviews required, including a letter addressing the California Historic Resource Information System about the old Ward House building's planned demolition. So they're like, you're going to have to run this past the Historical Society if you want to tear down the old building. So you can't just railroad everybody. You can't just run over them in good old Sunnyvale. So we'll keep an eye on this, but I thought that was extremely interesting. Any thoughts?
They're tearing down a historic building?
Well, a stake center that's been there forever. I think they're saying you're going to have to.
Well, and that's what I meant. I mean, the stake center's been there long enough. It's a historic building and they're just going to tear it down.
Yeah, I guess
For the
so. They need
temple?
the open space. Yeah, I'm telling you, they're doing this a lot. Everybody pay attention. They will tear down the stake center for the big space to put the temple. So
Something about the age of it makes me feel a little worse about the whole deal, but I
Yep.
guess it's their church.
Maybe
No,
they'll put it in a ballroom.
Yeah. Maybe they're going to build a ballroom. That could be
The
it. But
green
anyway,
and gold ballroom.
it's interesting to watch these towns that are really on it, right? And maybe they sort of have paid attention to how things go down before. I don't know, but the church is going to have to really answer and be more specific here. So I think
Rebecca, did I get that right, Bill? Is it green and gold? Is that what the ball that the Mormons used to have? And
Yeah, the
maybe
green
still
and
do
gold.
somewhere?
I don't think they do. I never got to go to one, and I'm pretty old, so I know it was my parents' day and my grandparents' day. So yeah, it was a while ago. So okay, so here's another thing I thought was interesting. Sometimes I get things that I go, aha, when it comes to temple, right? And this was passed on to me by Generally Unquotable, because we collaborate on a lot of temple stuff. And she had somebody that reached out to her who has a friend who is fairly high up in the church, knows a lot of things, can't really come out and say who this person is or even who the person is who's posting it. I know that sounds very sketchy, but everything here tracks with everything I've been talking about on the newscast, and you'll recognize it. So they say a friend of ours has a calling in the church. And apparently this friend golfs with a lot of the general authorities at Red Ledges where they're building the Heber Temple. So I've been to that golf course. It's nice. So all of the temples already built are sitting unused. Okay. This is information from somebody who's pretty high up in the church. Hobnobs, rubs elbows with the general authorities. They are sitting unused and they were built far too large, right? I think we've been talking about that for a while. The church is exploring making modular temples in some areas. We talked about that too, right? Not just modular, but meeting house level temples where they're not as opulent, they're not as fantastical, they're not as hotel lobby, something, very low key, more like the Hinckley era temples. And if you look at my graphic here on Mormonish, we even did an episode, Nelson versus Hinckley, 2 prophets, 2 visions for temples. If you're not familiar with President Hinckley's vision for temples, it was small temples would dot the land, right? And the kind of temple, I love this, he said, where somebody could just vacuum it and turn the light off and close the door at the end of the day. Very small, meeting house level, right? This was the vision. He built a lot of these. Here comes Nelson. And here's what this person, a church insider, says. Nelson nixed these smaller temples that Hinckley announced because they really didn't like each other. I love that. I think that's what we've all suspected. And this is a church insider, a faithful person saying this. So I think this is great. Any thoughts on that?
Just confirms what we already believed.
Yeah, it does. And what was it all for? That's what I ask. All this bad PR, probably some of the worst they've seen from the temple building. And it was all just kind of a pissing match, right? Oh, yeah?
How do you get a heart
small
surgeon
temple.
mad at you?
It's what?
How do you get a heart surgeon mad at you?
Yeah,
I'm not going along with everything they want is the answer.
Yeah. How you get him mad at you is that when he gives a talk in general conference saying we should never use the word Mormon, and then the prophet comes out and names you by name at the next conference and says, well, Elder Nelson is well-meaning, Mormon is fine to use. That's how you
And he
start.
patted him on the head in front of the entire church membership.
Yep,
He did
that's
that
it.
to a heart surgeon.
No, you do not. That's how you start a blood match grudge. And we've all, and I thought about how when they interviewed Wendy, when President Nelson first became prophet, and she said he is now unleashed and he can do everything he has wanted to do. That's what she said with his lighted pen. So anyway, you're right, Bill. It confirmed everything we already knew. Okay, here's my last temple news, or part of it. So this just popped in at the end of the day. And like I said, I think I've seen everything, but now I have seen everything. This is went out to a ward in the Oakland Temple District. It said the Oakland Temple has very few patrons scheduled for this coming Friday evening.
Because it's
Why
Halloween.
do you think that would be? Yeah,
Because it's freaking Halloween. It's the most important night of the year.
freaking Halloween. Exactly.
The temple should not be open on such a holy night.
If you want an uplifting activity for your family rather than going door to door for candy, right? How disparaging, right? Bring them to the door of the temple and spend time serving your ancestors.
Does that
You
mean
can
they're going to be
schedule-
able to trick or treat at the temple, or they're just going to have to wait outside?
No, and somebody made the point. If you have kids under the age of 11, what are they going to do? Sit in the lobby while you go do baptisms for the dead? I mean, it is the Holy Ghost and for the dead, but still. Anyway, it says, we'd love to spend time with you Friday evening in the baptistry. I think the reason this made me mad is because I know some families will do this. I know my family would have done this. And I know some kids are probably future Exmo podcasters 20 years from now. And if they have to go back to one defining moment, they're going to start their podcast by saying, my parents freaking took me to the temple on Halloween.
Look, I'm still apologizing to my kids for that one Halloween that fell on a freaking Sunday, and I was torn.
Yep. Yep.
I was torn.
Did you drive them around on Saturday? That's what I had to do.
They had some kind of trunk or treat thing in the church parking lot on Saturday, but it's not the same. Okay.
It's not the same. No, they didn't have trunk or treat when I was a kid.
Didn't go.
Yeah. No,
That's why I'm still apologizing to them.
Yeah. No, what they did is they had our ward. Everybody who was LDS opened their homes as if it was Halloween. So I got driven around in the brown Ford station wagon to all the members' homes to trick or treat on Saturday night. And I almost died when on the way, I saw some kids from my school. They saw me in my costume driving around. I mean, they're like, oh, she doesn't even know what night Halloween is. I knew it was awkward. I knew it was ridiculous. Yeah. See, I'm still traumatized. Halloween is a big deal. I'm working it out here on the newscast. That's what's happening. So, all right, in front of y'all. Okay, so one last thing here about temples. If you don't know how to carve your pumpkin, or you're out of ideas, you're tired of that smiley face or the eyes or the nose, 15 free Latter-day Saint pumpkin carving templates for Halloween, and most of them are
Can
temples.
you go back for a second, Rebecca?
Sure,
I know you're trying to get to the story because of the time.
I know. I'm going to leave out one of my stories. Yeah,
that's got to be the worst Moroni pumpkin carving I've ever seen in my life.
I wasn't sure what that was to begin with, but yeah, they have that on the front page. I think that's Moroni. But yeah, here you have some different temples. So I guarantee if y'all go trick-or-treating, you might see these. And then they put in some extra ones, Moroni's, Liahonas, kind of a scary version of Jesus, golden plates. Anyway, these templates are available on LDS Living. So there
that
you
one
go.
that's on the top, third from the left. I just don't see how that pumpkin's going to hold those three lines heading up on the left side of that.
Oh yeah,
I could not do that. My pumpkin would never allow me to do that. I'll just put it that way. Okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think structurally there might be some problems with these pumpkins. So
yeah, bottom left, that looks iffy too.
I don't know. Yeah. But you know what? If you guys are looking for something for the grandkids, here it is. So
the one that's on the bottom, though, the one that's on the bottom.
Which one?
The one that's two from the left. The one of Dracula coming through the open door. I like that one.
I think that's Jesus.
That's kind of spooky.
Yeah, it could be. And there's a little Pioneer handcart one and everything. So yeah, so for the sake of time, because I know we have more to get into, I'm going to zoom forward to my last story and we'll cover this one next time. I say that all the time. Okay. So this is interesting. It was Jasmine again. She put out a podcast about, did you know that President Oaks also has his own snatch from the jaws of death story? Are you guys familiar with this story?
Except that his story is so good that he actually snatched the hoodlum who was mugging him from the jaws of death, because he didn't save himself. He saved that man because he knew that his kung fu is so strong and his hands are registered as deadly weapons with the police department that if Elder Oaks had made a move on him, it would have been the last thing that happened to this kid.
Yep, and
on
that's
this
the
life.
story. And he's been telling it, I think, since the 90s. Everybody said a more recent version here is retold by Elder Bednar, right? And this is a graphic from Jasmine, but it is the story of then Elder Oaks. He and his wife were driving a sister home from a church meeting in South Chicago,
The south
right?
side of Chicago. They call
That's
it the
right.
baddest part of
Bad,
town for a
bad,
reason, Elder Oaks.
Leroy Brown. Yeah, exactly. And so after he dropped her off, and he walked her to the door. What a gentleman. And his wife was sitting in the car. He turned to walk back to the car, and suddenly there's a gun and a young man, and the gun is pointed right to his stomach, right? Give me your wallet. And he shows him his wallet, and it's empty. I don't know why it would be empty. He was an apostle. But anyway, his wallet was empty. And then the kid says, give me your car keys. And he looks at his wife inside the car and says, I won't, and tells her, don't unlock the door, right?
Because there's no way that bullet would go through the glass.
Yeah, I kind of
the
thought,
hard
here,
door glass.
I kind of feel like if I were in that scenario, I would want my partner to say, whatever, we're getting out of the car, we're going to go. You know what I mean? Nothing is more important than human life. You just kind of go.
Mhm.
Anyway, so the gun's pointed to his stomach, and the story goes that he felt it kind of slip, or the gunman kind of lose focus for a minute.
Mm.
And now Elder Oaks knew that he had military training that would allow him to take this, to absolutely turn the tables and probably really hurt or kill this young man.
No, he knew.
Yeah.
He knew by the power of the Holy Ghost that if he
Yeah.
made the move on this young hoodlum, that
Yeah.
he would get that gun from him, turn it around, and
Yeah.
shoot it into this hoodlum's chest and kill him. And he didn't want that innocent,
Yeah.
that quasi-innocent, that guilty blood
Right.
on his hands for the rest
Yeah.
of his life.
So the Holy Ghost stopped him
That's
from
how
using
holy
his,
President Oaks is.
that's right, elite military training. I have to laugh because my co-host Landon was in the military. He's like, what military training did he have? So he starts looking it up. He's like, oh, I was in the National Guard. I mean, maybe,
Yeah, weekend
maybe he
warrior.
did. Yeah, he was in the National Guard. So yeah, but the whole point was that he basically, because he followed the Spirit,
Mm.
he did not kill someone else. And so no blood is on his hands.
He
And the
weaned it
young
out by
man ran
following
off.
the Holy Ghost.
That's exactly right. So, but I thought that's very interesting. The rest of Jasmine's video is about all the times he was spared from death. President Oaks, he was almost stillborn. He was deathly ill. He, had all these different problems. It basically sounds like anybody's childhood in the 30s,
Mhm.
but apparently he was spared and saved for greater things. And I started thinking a lot of church leaders have these incredible origin stories. You have to have one, right? You have to be Harry Potter. You have to be Superman. You have to be larger than life. But I wonder,
I want this hoodlum to join the church, hear about this, and come forward with what really happened.
that is always interesting when that happens, because they always make stories a little bigger than they are. I have a story about that, since now I have an extra 2 minutes. So I have a family member who was attending a relief society in another state, not her own state. She was just on vacation. And the woman teaching Relief Society pulled up an Ensign article about, I can't remember which apostle it was, but he'd been on an airplane flight, and there was a mother with a young child who had epilepsy, seizures,
gosh.
and a blessing was given, and the baby was healed. And that was in the Ensign article. But then the teacher said, and that baby is a stake president now today, right? Well, my family member recognized the story because it was her own nephew. And he wasn't a stake president. He was actually in juvie, at least then. He's fine now. But the idea that you have to embellish. And so she went up to the teacher afterwards. I
Okay.
could not imagine being that teacher. Can you imagine embellishing a random story in the Ensign and then having somebody come up to you afterwards and say, that's my nephew. And yeah, no, that wasn't really, how it ended. So I think we just all have this sense that you want something to be more important maybe than it was, or find meaning. So I don't know. We'll have to see if there are these stories going forward, about this miraculous event, if this gets more play.
There are these things that seem miraculous,
Mhm.
and therefore we want them to be miraculous. So we embellish them so that they are more miraculous than they were. And
Yep.
then the story gets told, and you add your own embellishment to make it even more miraculous.
Yep.
Now he's the stake president. So it gets handed on down to posterity.
Yep, that's exactly how it happens. And I think, President Nelson was a great example of that. And all of us, looked at those two stories, the incident at Mozambique. We could track that through the Deseret News itself, how it blew up and changed, and then the airplane. But if you still Google it, you will still get the AI answer. He survived a fiery plane crash, and it's still there. So
Don't forget the lady in the hat.
Oh, and the lady in the
That
red
one was
hat.
so
Yeah.
bad they actually had to take the entire story out of the book.
Yep. No, and Holland's story about the two brothers running into each other. I think you're realizing that the era of Paul H. Dunn is over. You cannot tell something without being fact checked. So it's interesting. Anyway, I think that takes us, oh my gosh, to the very end. Unless you guys have any more comments on any more stories, we'll go over a few things coming up because there's some pretty amazing stuff happening this week. It's a spooky week.
It is. And not to speak ill of the dead, but when I was listening to that 4 recent discoveries, one of them had to do with President Nelson and the somewhat contradictory accounts of the vision he had, whereby he knew that his son was to be named Russell Marion Nelson Jr. That was on there too. It's amazing. I mean, it's been 9 years, but honestly, I think that I forget more than half of the stuff I've said.
Yeah, well, but it's kind of like resurrecting the gnat. There has to be some meaning. There has to be something important. Or the miracle of the microphone that we just heard with, was that Elder Stevenson? That would be funny if it was. I can't remember, where he was heard in the back of the room at the MTC when I think it might have been, when the sound system went out, Yeah. So there are all these little things that you can spin into a very positive, faith affirming thing. But the rest of us, of course, we don't. So, all right, let's look at what's coming up next week. I just wanted to put this up because I know I wasn't here last week and this aired on Mormonish last week. And it's did you guys know that? Read this name there, RFM. Are you aware of this?
I'm aware of many things. In fact, I may have been consulted in the preparatory stages.
Really? So yes, I want to be one of the first that does this. I never knew that our good friend, Randy Bell, great friend to all of our podcasts and, to everybody, we've always just called him Randy Bell. I never knew that was his nickname. And now, all of his official documents.
You didn't know Randy was a nickname for Randall?
Yes, but I didn't know that was not his first name.
Oh, right.
I didn't know that was his actual name. Yeah, I did know that. Yes, I do know some things. His actual name is Glenn. So he now wants to start going by, Glenn Bell. So there you go. So anyway, we had Dr. Glenn Randy Bell on to talk about how similar is the LDS Church to an MLM? Are they using the same playbook? He had some really great insights into this. It was a really fun episode. It's already up if anybody wants to catch that, because that was last week. Coming up tomorrow for Halloween. This is a fantastic episode. We did air this before, but we didn't have, we have quite a few more viewers who haven't seen this. This is the wonderful Dr. John Lundwell talking about, couldn't get more Halloweeny than this, decapitation in the Book of Mormon. So I think this will get you in the mood for Halloween. So those are the two things Mormonish has coming up. Let's talk about what you guys have going on.
This is the Radio Free Mormon that premiered last Saturday. It is, it's got a couple of important things in it. One of which was another attempt of the church to deceive the membership about doctrine. And I exposed that. And that's the first time it's been exposed to my knowledge, because it showed up in the 2020 Come Follow Me Book of Mormon manual. And then it raised such a hubbub for other reasons that it got taken out in short order. So that's where all my attention has been before this. But as I was actually reading what it was before they took it out, I saw that they were also trying to deceive everybody as well. And the second thing, of course, is that it looks like the church may indeed be being or issuing translations of the Book of Mormon, which are slimmed down in third world or developing countries, including several in Africa, where the slimmed down versions of the Book of Mormon managed to avoid mentioning any of the passages relating to dark skin being a curse from God.
Yeah, Mormonish did a whole episode on that called, Is the Book of Mormon Different in Africa? And we had somebody that served a mission there that described these pamphlets that just took excerpts. And it was really interesting as we went through what they chose to include and what they chose to exclude. So very interesting. It's an awesome topic. And so this is already aired from you. You can watch this right now. Perfect. Available now. All right. What else is going on? You guys have a big week.
All right. I'm so sorry, Bill. Talk about shame.
Really quickly, we did a episode for the Almost Awakened podcast where Teresa and I talk about shame and how unhealthy family systems and unhealthy religious systems utilize shame to gain control of people, how to spot it, what are the red flags, and what kind of harm it does, and what to do to work past that and to set boundaries so that folks that have a propensity to do that aren't doing it anymore to you. And then Wednesday night, we've got Mormonism Live, Martin Harris, The Untold Story. And what we're planning to do in this episode is we'll lay out a little bit of background on Martin Harris, but I've been wanting to, for a while, go into each of the three witnesses and really examine their credibility. And let's find out if these are the kind of guys that you want as witnesses of the truth of your door-to-door thing that you're selling. And I chose Martin Harris first only because Joseph Smith encounters him first. Although maybe he encounters Oliver Cowdery first, since they're like second cousins, but we don't have any data that says they hung out when they were little children.
Yeah, do you know the one question that everybody would ask Martin Harris when they saw him in his later years? They would ask him, "Is that your walking stick, Martin, or are you just happy to see me?"
I thought you were going to say something about the neck beard. This is the very first neck beard I've ever seen in a vintage photo. So Martin Harris and the old neck beard. He's rocking that. But this, what we'll do is we'll examine the credibility of Martin Harris and look into several things. I mean, we probably go through maybe 8 things or so about Martin Harris that would give us a good idea about the credibility of this man. And that'll be a lot of fun.
As long as talking to Jesus in the form of a deer as he walks along is included, I'll be happy.
It is one of them. And we have a nice image of Jesus as a deer. So you'll be able to see that.
Did you know that Dallas Harris Oaks, it might have been the first time people even heard Harris was what H stood for. He is the, I think, great nephew of Martin Harris. President Oaks is related to Martin Harris. That's his claim to LDS royalty. Yeah.
Interesting. I wish Martin would have just stayed away.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of a loose tie. It's your, it's not direct. It's your nephew kind of a thing. But yeah, that's what the Harris is for in the H.
If Martin ever came back, would Dallin be in the LDS Church?
That's a good question.
If time travel is invented, I'll figure that out. All right.
I think you call him Dallas Olin Oaks. Dallas Olin. O-L-I.
I don't even know what the real name is anymore. I've heard so many variations. I don't know.
And then Friday night, we touched on it before. Let's touch on it again, Bill.
Oh, happy Halloween from the Mormon Newscast. I had to throw that in there and say.
Oh, I thought that was about Friday night. Well, it is.
Yeah,
but
it will be
about
after
the Mormonism
this.
After Dark party.
Yeah, but first, I'm just saying happy Halloween from the Newscast. That's my little slide I threw in. I put little hats on us and wished everybody
why do
happy
I get the
Halloween.
horns?
That's right. Of course I gave you horns. What else? But then you guys have an amazing event on Friday night, Halloween, not at the baptistry, not at the baptistry.
Mormonism After Dark. I got to move that Salt Lake Temple. It's crowding you a little bit there.
I know, it's cramping my style.
October 31st. You've got this one coming up too. I put a thumbnail about that.
Yes. That'll be Saturday, November 1st, All Souls Day. Are Mormons Christian? Case closed. A lot of people have been addressing this recently because there's a hubbub that came up that, when there's these Mormons who got shot to pieces over in, Minnesota? I think it was. Grand Blanc. Yeah. And the whole church burned down. And then there were some Christians out there who were saying, we feel bad for the Mormons and we want to support them, even though they're not Christians. And the Mormons did what Mormons always do, and they got into a fight about whether they should be called Christians.
Have you been following the mayoral race in Idaho Falls? There is a candidate who belongs to another denomination. And in the kind of question answer, there's somebody moderating. The moderator reading questions said to this man who's running for mayor, are Mormons Christian? Do you think Mormons are Christian? Can you believe that? And he said, well, I'm a Christian. And he said, do you think Mormons are Christian? Right. And he said, I don't know. I think they can think whatever they want to be, but again, in a political race, right? A dog whistle to everybody. This man is not LDS. And then the other two candidates put out statements later and said, I am a member of the church,
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, they put him right on the spot with that question: Are Mormons Christian? And he handled it. He said, "I don't know," but it's a huge question,
No,
and
he
it's
didn't
a
handle it at all.
polarizing
His
question.
answer should have been yes. I
Well,
don't care what he believes. If he's running for office in Idaho, his answer should be yes. When
you
somebody
do have
asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
that you do have a point. Yeah. I put a short out about that if anybody wants to see it. He's just kind of on the hot seat going, really? You get a question about the sewer and I get a question about are Mormons Christian? It's not fair.
So RFM, this will be Saturday, 7 p.m.
That is the goal. 7 p.m. Mountain Time, Bill. Premiering.
Okay. And then I'll just add here, you were talking about the Mormonism After Dark this Friday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. We're throwing open the crypt for a spectacular edition of Mormonism After Dark, and all of you are invited. But here's the trick and the treat. Only those who show up in costume will be brought on screen to share their questions, comments, and to be able to tell their ghost stories. Think of it as celestial Halloween cosplay. So dust off that Freddy Krueger costume, that pioneer outfit, your temple attire, or simply cut two eye holes in a sheet. But Monday, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, live on Mormonism After Dark, costumes required for on-screen participation. No costume? Then you're just a ghost in the chat.
And some of you won't be allowed. And some of you won't be allowed on even if you show up in costume. And you know who you are.
Yeah, there's two of you.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for me, and I'll leave it up to you to decide what's if you guys are done.
I'm done.
Yeah, I think we're done. I think we did it. It is a big week and it's really exciting. And I think, you guys weren't doing Mormonism After Dark last year, right? So this is the first time that you're doing a Halloween party, right?
I don't know, Bill. It seems like I can't tell. I have
know, I
no
can't tell
idea.
either.
Tell me. It seems like longer.
It does seem like longer. I mean,
Are
the
you able to
newscast
tell
is
us
coming
how-
up on the second year. We're coming up very close to the second year, which is incredible. I know. How
The
many
end of the
hours
second
is
year?
that? Yeah.
On the
We're heading
newscast.
toward it on the newscast. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's amazing. And is there any kind of dress?
We're coming up on the 5th anniversary in December of Mormonism Live.
There you go. And you just Radio Free Mormon just had your ninth year. Yeah,
Yes,
it's incredible. Time really flies when you're doing something that you love to do with people,
You know what
that
I was
you
thinking the other
appreciate.
day while Bill's looking for this? What I was thinking the other day was, there's stuff going on with Lauren
Matthias. I know.
and
I've been
stuff.
trying to follow that. It's so confusing.
Right. And hopefully she'll be in a place where she can come on the show and talk about it here. They have a lot of information over there at the Hidden True Crime about it if you want to check it out. But tons and tons of people watch true crime podcasts. It's so big. And I started thinking, I'm an attorney. I'm a criminal attorney, prosecutor, then defense attorney. Yes, I should do this. But then I thought I don't have time. It would take away from this. And you know what I thought? I actually thought this. So I want you to know this. This is one of the few good things I ever thought, which is that I thought, but this is why I stopped practicing law and went into this specifically full-time podcasting, is because this is where I'm helping people. I'm not helping people by doing true crime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is helping people. This is where I stay.
And you do have the opportunity to report on a lot of true crime that has to do with Mormonism. But you're
Sure.
right. I do see that with podcasters. When they transcend the post-Mormon space, it's either to talk about cults in general or it's to move on to all true crime. And that's when they really blow up. So that is what happens.
Thanks to the Corden family, you still get to cover true crime in Mormonism.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. But I don't get the views that Hidden True Crime and other people.
There was a lot of it. I went on a haunted Salt Lake ghost tour on my birthday. That's what I did the night of my birthday a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And there was a lot of true crime and it all had to do with Mormonism. We went to the Mark Hoffman building actually on the day the bomb happened, which was my birthday in 1985, and ruined one of my college birthday parties.
The Chiefs bomb.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. When he let off the bomb at the Judge building. Yeah, there was all kinds of true crime down there in Salt Lake, and it all had a Mormon spin to it and flavor to it. So
yeah, well, that makes sense in Salt Lake City
because it would be in Salt Lake. Yeah, it was kind of interesting, and they said they were branching out to Provo because there was a lot of Mormon crime there. Maybe they'll go to the Lafferty House. I happen to know where that is.
I won't be satisfied until we have Mormon crime across the world.
Yeah. I'm sure we're headed that way. There's a lot of stories. All right, we did it. Let's wrap up. And everybody have a wonderful and safe Halloween. And please tune in to anything that you thought sounded interesting of all the things that we're putting out. And especially get your costume ready for Bill and RFM's Mormonism After Dark on Friday night. That's going to be amazing. We will see everybody next time. Thank you, RFM. Thank you, Bill. We will catch you next Monday, 6 p.m. as always. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.